Hi everyone, and welcome to today's Biology Daily Booster, and today we are at number 9. Do note that this is one of the advanced information listed topics, and this time it is for higher tier biology students. While this isn't explicitly listed on the foundation, that doesn't mean there won't be questions on it on a foundation paper, because as we know, there is no content that will not be assessed on the specification. What we're going to be looking at in this little booster is the process of mitosis. So first of all, mitosis is the way that we're going to produce new body cells. So the little way you can remember it is my little rhyme on the right there: mitosis happens in mitoses. Now, the reason that we need to be able to create new body cells is if we've damaged any tissue, we need to repair it. When old cells actually wear out, we need to replace them. And we need to make new cells in order to actually allow organisms to grow. So repair of damaged tissue, replacement of worn out cells, and growth of organisms are 3 key reasons that we need body cells to divide. When we look at what mitosis actually produces, we need to use this phrase: 2 genetically identical cells. You can see there I've used the word daughter cells on the actual text. If you don't include the word daughter cell, but you get 2 genetically identical cells, you're absolutely fine with your answer. But the key phrase there is there are 2 of them and they are genetically identical. Don't just say identical, make sure you include the word genetically identical. Now, what we need to understand is the slightly larger process of the entire cell cycle. Mitosis is just a little part of this. The cell cycle itself is the whole thing that cells go through in order to actually grow and divide. So what we have are 4 phases. First thing is a growth phase. We then have our DNA replication. Third is another growth phase. And then finally we have our mitosis, the movement of the chromosomes. So you can see in the little picture at the bottom, we've got G1 is the growth phase. Then S is our synthesis, so DNA replication, we're synthesizing new DNA. G2 is the other growth phase, and then the M is where we're getting the movement of the chromosomes, and that is where mitosis occurs. So mitosis is only in the M phase. What we need to understand then is how DNA replication actually takes place. So this has been a common 2-mark question on previous exam papers. So the question will be something along the lines of describe how DNA is replicated. Your first mark is for using this phrase that DNA unzips. So what we mean by that is our double helix shape is going to separate to make 2 individual single strands of DNA. These act as a template. What we then have are these 3 DNA bases that are going to pair up with their complementary base pairs. This ties back into our early work on DNA. So we know complementary base pairs, I hope, are A and T and C and G. So your second mark is for saying the 3 DNA bases pair up with their complementary base pairs. So you can see here that what we've just done is we've added in our complementary base pairs, and that continues right the way down the strand to make 2 identical strands of DNA. So we've got double the DNA. The next phase then is mitosis itself. So when it comes to mitosis, we need to understand what's happening to the chromosomes. What we need to have then are these kind of key ideas. So the first bit we need to know is that the chromosomes line up along the equator. If you can't remember the word equator, the middle of the cell usually works as a mark. So the chromosomes all line up along the equator first of all. Then they're going to be pulled apart by these spindle fibres to the opposite poles. So opposite poles means the opposite ends of the cell there. Once those individual chromosomes have reached the opposite poles, what we do, form a new nucleus around the new set of chromosomes, and then the cell divides in a process called cytokinesis. So the cell membrane pinches in and we make 2 separate daughter cells. We then need to understand what we mean by differentiation. And quite simply, if we say a cell has differentiated, or what is the process of differentiation, we're changing an unspecialised cell to a specialised one that's going to carry out a particular function. So unspecialised cell becomes specialised to carry out a particular function. And the reason that we do this in organisms is it makes them well adapted for that function. So good examples here are your sperm cells, the fat cells, the red blood cells, and we've had a look at some of these key features in other sections of the course. That brings us really nicely onto stem cells. So the thing we need to know about stem cells above all else is that a stem cell is an undifferentiated cell. So if they ask you what is a stem cell, undifferentiated cell is the answer to put down. The key thing about these stem cells is that they can divide by mitosis and then differentiate into specialised cells. Now, depending on the type of stem cell is going to tell us how many types of cell it can differentiate into. Embryonic stem cells, first of all, these are the ones that come from an embryo, as the name suggests. They can differentiate into all cell types. So this means we can use it to make any type of cell at all. Adult stem cells, however, these can only differentiate into some cell types. So in terms of stem cell research, embryonic are far more useful to us than adult because they can obviously differentiate into all cell types, whereas the adult stem cells can only differentiate into some cell types. We then need to remember that plants also have their own version of stem cells, and these are called meristems. So they're basically found in the growing bits of the plant. So root tips, shoot tips, and the buds. So the bits of the plant that are growing will have these meristem cells. And the key thing about our meristem cells, they're small, they've got very thin walls, they've got small vacuoles and no chloroplasts. In all honesty, that last box, I can't recall ever having seen a question on it, but they do like to ask you what the stem cells in plants are called, and it is meristem that they are looking for there. Final thing for today then is to head on over to have a go at the quiz to check your understanding. As always, if there are topics that you don't do well on when you do that little quiz, then do revisit the main video on the channel. Look through your revision books, look through your own classwork to make sure you are confident in this. Don't forget to join us again tomorrow for our next Daily Booster.